Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wind Down Wednesday, episode 10. So we've been doing this for 2.5 months now, and I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been tuning in, whether you're doing it live or watching the videos after the fact. It is been an honor for me to keep sharing these with you, and I feel like I've grown a lot doing these, and I hope that you feel that way as well. I just wanted to remind you that all of the previous episodes of Wind Down Wednesday are available on my website, which is paulataylorenergy.com, and I am still running the 30% off special for all of my services through the website. So that includes coaching, energy work, and the animal communication. And then I have packages for coaching and energy work. So all of that is 30% off with the code KINDNESS2020. And I'll leave that in the comments at the end of the video. So tonight we are going to talk about silence. And I want to talk a little bit about literal silence, actual quiet silence, and then what I think of as figurative silence, which is stillness, what I would call stillness. And so I want to start with external silence. So are you somebody who has a lot of noise around you in your environment? Do you like to have the TV on? Do you like to have music playing all the time? Are you looking for distraction? That's kind of what I'm talking about with external silence. So we've been dealing a lot over the past several weeks with trauma. We talked about ancestral trauma. We've talked a little bit about personal trauma. And I think that distraction is one of the big ways that we try to avoid dealing with those traumas. We kind of shove those emotions down. And when we have silence in our environment, then it's harder to block that out or kind of keep it shoved down. So that's the first kind of silence I wanted to mention, is external silence, silence in your environment. So internal silence is what I would talk about in terms of what is your mind doing? Are your thoughts racing? Do you have to-do lists running through your mind all the time? Are you always planning, thinking about the next step? Or is your mind quiet? Are you able to have stillness or silence in your mind? And having this kind of stillness is what allows us to open to our intuition. So you'll notice every week when we start our meditation, I usually start kind of bringing you down through the body to really get you settled, to allow some stillness inside, because without that inner stillness, it's really hard to tap into the intuition. And when we do receive messages, if we're kind of in a chaotic state, it's really hard to recognize if you're tapping into a higher intuitive self, if you're tapping into divine connection, or if it's just the small mind, the ego kind of racing and talking to you, telling you things. So that's why inner stillness or inner silence is important. And then the last type of silence I want to talk about is silence in relationship or in conversation. And the reason that I'm doing this topic this week is because I recently did an interview with Zoe from Paranormal Extraction, where I talked about addiction from a spiritual perspective. And if you're interested, I have the interview posted on my Facebook page, on the Paula Taylor Energy Facebook page. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you to check it out. I was talking with a friend last week about that interview. It was the first one-on-one interview I've done kind of since the book came out. And he had suggested to me that while he was watching the interview, it seemed like I was doing a lot of talking. And he said, I could tell you were really excited. You know, you're very passionate about what you're talking about. But I could also tell that the interviewer, Zoe, that there were times that she wanted to maybe ask another question or ask for clarification, and you weren't leaving silence for that. You weren't leaving space for her to kind of respond. And it was said with, in the most loving way, with a very loving intention, and it was a very positive feedback. But I did get a little triggered by it, and that's normal. I'm actually working on a blog post about triggering now and processing, and that'll be coming out probably in the next couple weeks, and we may talk more about that in our Wind Down Wednesdays. But the first thing I did, I kind of thought about why I got triggered. And I've seen this meme a few times recently on Facebook where somebody says, this is for all the girls who were told they talk too much on their report cards or something like that. And I do think as women, a lot of us were raised to, whether indirectly or directly, we were raised with this messaging that women should be seen and not heard. And so I think a lot of us, or, we were told we were bossy because we talked a lot, or we sort of like to order people around. And so there is kind of a gender thing there where I think I got a little bit triggered by that, because I feel like my whole life people have been telling me either I'm too loud or I talk too much or whatever. So that came up, and that's a good example of a past trauma. It had nothing to do with what he was telling me in the moment, but these years of people sort of telling me that I talk too much or that I'm too loud, that all is still in there, and that kind of came up. So I had to kind of get through that. I had to step aside from that to process what he had told me, outside of being triggered by those previous kind of events. So what I like to do for that, one of the things I like to do for that is meditation. So when I sat in meditation and I started thinking specifically about what he said and about silence in general, I got all this information, and I realized, like, I'm pretty good with external silence. I do like to play with my phone, and I have to watch the distraction, but I like to have a quiet environment. And when I use sound, it's usually with intention. I'll play sound purposefully to relax myself, or I'm doing the dishes and I just want music on. I mean, I'm not living in a silent monastery or anything. And I do pretty well, especially a lot better than I used to with internal silence. I have a lot of mental racing sometimes, but through meditation and years of yoga and all this stuff, I've learned to kind of calm that down. But I see that I can definitely improve with my silence in relationship, and especially in that interview setting. It's scary. Silence can be very scary. That external silence can be very scary. Quieting the mind can be scary, because it gives us a chance to look at the things that maybe we didn't want to look at. And when you're in conversation with another person, socially, if you're completely silent, that can get awkward. So there's that kind of thing going on there too. But when I really thought about it, when I got into meditation about it, and what he had said to me, that it took me a little while to kind of process and get that into I had to mentally process that and then emotionally process that. And that's kind of what my blog post will be about. But allowing space for processing, and that this word processing keeps coming up, but so when you're talking to somebody, you're exchanging information, and I get very excited. I'm very passionate about spirituality and energy and sharing this knowledge with people, and especially introducing people to this who maybe are not familiar with it and who are new to it. That's one of my passions. But it's important to allow people time and space to process. So if you just kind of dump a bunch of information on someone, it can be a little bit overwhelming. And that can be true in any kind of conversation. And the other thing that he talked about that I ended up meditating on was the idea of allowing questions, allowing response. So a lot of us in conversation, especially, we're sort of just waiting for our chance to respond. And we're listening maybe, but we can work on that. We can work on really grounding and expanding and allowing ourselves to hold space for someone else to respond to what we've said, instead of kind of a rapid back and forth Gilmore Girls style speech pattern, which is kind of where I come from. And I do come from the North, and we tend to talk fast and talk a lot. And it's different. It depends on where you go, and everyone's different. So really respecting the flow of conversation, respecting the person that you're speaking with, and that's all part of this kind of spiritual growth. So that's kind of what I wanted to say about silence. And I encourage you to develop a silent practice. And this might be really scary. So what I would suggest is start with a very short amount of time, like 2 minutes, 2 to 5 minutes, and you can even set a little timer. And then just sit in silence and make sure if you're going to be distracted, if you're going to be reaching for your phone, put it on the other side of the room or out of the room, turn the ringer off, turn the TV off, turn music off. We're looking for complete silence here. And if you sit outside, you're going to hear the sounds of nature, and that's part of tuning in. That's fine. But what I'm talking about is sort of this artificial noise that we create around us that can create chaos. So what I encourage you to do is try this. If you can, try it daily, but at least, every few days, set your little timer. Maybe it's 2 minutes, maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe you work up to 10 minutes, and just sit in silence and notice what comes up for you. Is your mind racing? And again, like everything else we do when we're practicing, we really want to be gentle with ourselves. So you don't want to judge yourself. Oh man, I can't stop thinking. Oh, like that's not going to help you. That's just going to make it worse. You're just noticing. We're building some awareness around silence. How do you feel in silence? Do you have fear coming up? Is it just seem like a giant waste of time? Are you getting angry about it? Is it peaceful? Do you feel like, oh, this is a relief? One of the things that I've noticed since I've been home a lot from the being mostly in quarantine and not working outside my house anymore is that I've grown accustomed to being in solitude and being in silence. And when I am out in public, I find it much more overstimulating than I used to. But I think it's more of an awareness thing. I've always been prone to overstimulation. I'm very sensitive. So being in crowds, I've always had a hard time with that. But what I've noticed is I'm paying more attention to that. I'm paying more attention to how I feel. So if I go out and I'm interacting with people, I recognize when I come home, I do need to practice silence for a little while and breathe and kind of let myself process that so that it doesn't turn into another trauma, so that I'm not getting overstimulated and kind of just shoving it down and moving on through my life the way that I maybe was in the past. So tonight we're going to do something a little bit different with our meditation. I'm still going to guide you into a nice kind of relaxed, still place. But instead of doing a fully guided meditation for the entire time, we're going to do a mantra meditation. And I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to explain what mantra is and what the mantra we're using and why we're doing that. So I've mentioned a couple times, I've been practicing yoga since I was 19, over 20 years. And I love Kundalini yoga. It's kind of I like a lot of types of yoga, but Kundalini is a specific style of yoga that's meant to move energy. And we use a lot of mantra in Kundalini yoga. So I went to the Kundalini yoga, the official website, because I wanted to make sure I got all of my definitions right, because sometimes you'll hear different translations of things and stuff. So mantra, the word itself, actually translates to mind wave. So mantra is basically using words of some sort, and in Kundalini we're not using English words, but we're using sound, we're using words or sound to produce a specific vibration. And so all of the mantras that we use in Kundalini yoga have a different purpose, but they all move energy. And so a lot of times we will use these mantras out loud as a chant. And if you have been following my blog, I did post a couple months ago, I posted a chant for anxiety, and that is still on my website. If you're interested, if this sort of piques your interest in mantra, we're using the same mantra tonight. In that particular chant, I was chanting out loud, and I was encouraging you to chant out loud. But for this practice tonight, we're actually going to do a silent mantra meditation. So I'm going to introduce the mantra to you, and then I'm going to go silent, and I'm going to encourage you to repeat it silently to yourself. And one of the reasons mantra is so great is that I mentioned this in I think the very first Wind Down Wednesday we had. It's really difficult to shut your mind off. And the harder you try, the more it's going to race, typically. So mantra is a great way to focus your mind and give it something to pay attention to, and then allow that stillness to come in. If I tell you, empty your mind and be silent, and then I say nothing else, it's kind of like that scene in Ghostbusters where they're supposed to empty their mind, and then Ray thinks of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and they're all like, Ray, why did you think of that? And he said, well, I couldn't empty my mind. I tried to think of the most harmless thing I could. That's kind of a great, it's a great lesson on meditation, because if somebody tells you empty your mind, it's just not going to work. So mantra is a great way to focus the mind. So that's what we're going to do tonight. So the mantra that we're going to use is Sat Nam. It's SAT, like sat, but it's pronounced Sat. And then NAM, that's pronounced Nam. And the way I want you to use this silently is that as you inhale, you're going to think to yourself Sat. And as you exhale, you're going to think to yourself Nam. And you might be asking yourself, well, we're doing a silent meditation, but if we're thinking, are we really silent? So here's where the silence comes in. So you'll notice when you breathe, as you breathe in, there's a little break at the top of your breath, and then a little longer break at the bottom. And as you do nice deep breathing, you'll notice that you can kind of lengthen that time, especially after the out breath. When I do a long yoga class, sometimes at the very end of class, they'll tell me to take 3 deep breaths, and I'll only have taken 1 because I'm so well oxygenated that I'm really I'm sitting in that silence between breaths. And that's what we're looking for tonight. So as you breathe in, you're going to think Sat. As you breathe out, you're going to think Nam. And then you're going to just allow a little bit of silence, a little bit of release in the mind before you breathe in again. And then you can start thinking Sat again. And this is a practice like everything else we do. If you've never done this before, don't get frustrated with yourself. Your mind, even with the mantra, your mind may wander. So when your mind wanders, just bring it back, just gently, like if you had a toddler that wandered away, you would just kind of, unless they ran into the street, you might be like, but if they just walked a few feet away from you, you would just gently gather them back in. Or if you had a little puppy that was getting away. So think about your mind that way. You don't want to judge your mind. You don't want to be angry about this. If your mind starts to wander, just bring it back and come back to the mantra. And what you'll notice perhaps as you get into this, as your breaths lengthen out, is that you can lengthen that time at the bottom of the breath. And you'll notice a little bit of silence and stillness, and you may notice your mind kind of relaxing. And just pay attention to that. Pay attention to how you feel. At the end of the meditation, I'll encourage you to release the mantra, and then we will sit in silence for a few moments just to kind of let that vibration reverberate, to experience total silence. I'm going to try to stay silent through the meditation. If I'm guided to say a little bit, I will, but the goal of this is to really introduce some silence into our lives, into this practice for tonight. So I think that's all I wanted to say. Let me take a quick sip of water. So like I say every week, be gentle with yourself. Let yourself just kind of flow into this. If your mind wanders, just gently bring it back. You may have to do that every single breath through the whole meditation, and that's okay. As you practice this, if you repeat this meditation, you'll find that it becomes easier. And eventually you may get into kind of like a flow where you're not even, the mantra's just sort of happening with the breath. So I'll guide you into meditation. We'll kind of get grounded. I'll guide you into the mantra. Then I'll go silent, and you'll just keep repeating that mantra to yourself. Then I'll guide you to let it go, and we'll kind of come back into the room and finish the meditation like we always do. So find yourself a nice comfortable position. If you're sitting up, get your feet nice and flat on the floor and let them feel connected to the earth there. Take a couple of deep breaths in through your nose and let them out with a nice sigh. You can use that ha sound if you like. That vibrates the vagus nerve. It invites the parasympathetic nervous system to take over. Take a couple more deep breaths like that, in through the nose and out through the mouth. Let your body settle into the chair or onto the floor, wherever you're sitting or lying down. Just check in for a moment as we start. Notice how your mind feels. Notice if it's racing. Are you thinking about what you have to do after this meditation is over or tomorrow? Set the intention to let that go. All of those thoughts will be here at the end of this meditation. So let yourself really focus on being in the present for this meditation. Imagine the top of your head, your crown chakra opening. Invite the beautiful, loving light of divine energy to come in through the top of your head. You can see this as a color of your choice, whatever comes to you. I usually see gold. You can invite this light, this color, this energy in through the top of your head. Let it come into your face. Let it come into your jaw. Let this energy come into your neck and your throat, down into your shoulders. Allow this loving, relaxing energy to flow into your upper arms, down into your elbows. Let it come into your forearms and wrists and hands. Allow this soothing, relaxing light to come into the top of your chest and your upper back. Let it come into your abdomen and mid-back, to your low back and low belly. Let this beautiful divine energy flow into your hips and your pelvis. Allow it to gently flow into the upper part of your legs. Let this beautiful divine light flow into your knees. Let it come down into your lower legs, all the way down to your ankles and feet. Let your mind settle. Let your thoughts settle like ripples on a pond. Allow yourself to reacquaint with stillness, with silence. Take a couple of deep breaths into any areas of tension you're still noticing in the body. We want to continue breathing deeply through the meditation. You can breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth, or in and out through the nose, whatever's comfortable for you. And let's introduce the mantra, Sat Nam. So as you're breathing in, let yourself think Sat, a long Sat. And then as you breathe out, you think Nam, a long Nam, as you breathe out. Breathing in, Sat. And breathing out, Nam. And give yourself a moment between breaths to just be in silence. And then breathe back in, Sat. And breathing out, Nam. Continue breathing in this way, gently. Breathing in, Sat. Breathing out, Nam. Repeat this mantra silently to yourself as you continue breathing, and let yourself pay attention to the silence and stillness between breaths. If your mind starts to wander, gently bring it back to the mantra. Breathing in Sat and breathing out Nam. Let your awareness linger on the space between your breaths. Allow this space to expand with each breath if it feels comfortable. Stay with the mantra. Breathing in Sat. Breathing out Nam. Finish your last round of breathing. Breathing in, Sat, and breathing out, Nam. And then release the mantra. Let this stillness reverberate within you and in your space. Notice how you feel compared to when we started. Does your mind feel quieter? Does your body feel more still? Let yourself sit in this stillness, in this silence for a few more moments. Allow yourself to set the intention of inviting more silence and stillness into your life. I'm going to introduce a few affirmations for our silent practice. I am open to silence and stillness. Silence allows me to grow and expand. I lovingly allow for silence within conversation. I lovingly allow for stillness in my mind and body. I lovingly allow for silence and stillness in my home. Invite any other affirmations that come to you to come into your mind at this time. Allow this mantra to reverberate through your energetic field. Sat Nam. Truth is my identity. If you'd like to allow your crown chakra, the top of your head, to gently close, you can do that now. You don't have to, whatever feels right to you. You can stay tuned in to this divine flow of energy. But make sure that you're back in your body. Wiggle your toes, let yourself feel your feet on the ground. Maybe wiggle your fingers. Move around a little bit. You can move your head a little bit in space. Bring your hands to your heart, allowing for one last moment of stillness and silence in this sacred space within your body. Set the intention to allow silence and stillness into your life, to open up to that intuitive flow of information, that divine flow of energy that is more readily available to us when we're in stillness, when we're in silence. Send yourself some gratitude for completing this practice. Let this energy flow into your heart for the last moment here. Take one last nice deep breath in through your nose and let it out with a sigh. Allow your hands to relax back down. And as you're ready, open your eyes. Thank you so much for participating in this practice. This can be a challenging practice of being in silence. You're free to repeat this meditation. Keep this mantra with you, Sat Nam, truth is my identity. It's a very simple but such a powerful meditation to bring us back to ourselves, to bring us back to the present moment. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Have a wonderful rest of your night and a beautiful rest of your week. And I will see you next week for Wind Down Wednesday.